Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It is a Pewter post-game show as we are talking about yet another Tampa Bay Buccaneers victory as they defeated the Las Vegas Raiders this afternoon by a score of 28-13. The Bucs have now won 3 games in a row. And just as importantly, if not more importantly, they are in sole possession of first place in the NFC South after the Falcons lost this afternoon to the Minnesota Vikings. It wasn't the prettiest of games for the Bucs, but a win is a win, and there are no apologies for that. So we're going to break down the game and look at what's ahead for the Bucs. I'm your host, Matt Matera, joined with me live from Raymond James Stadium, fellow co-host of the show and the face that runs the place at PewterReport.com, SR Scott Reynolds. Scott, it feels good to be talking about a Bucs win again. There was that rough stretch where they lost 4 in a row, but they completely flipped the script. They've won 3 in a row, and I don't know, it just feels better talking about a win.
Yeah, it sure does, Matt. When you look at this win today, it wasn't terribly impressive, right? It was in some spurts. They started the game well. They ended it well. Quarters 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe had we known it was going to be this bad, maybe you take a nap, maybe you go mow the grass, whatever. But it certainly was not the start to finish game that this team wanted to script and lay out. This team does get some credit for showing the resolve to not just squeak out the win, but really put an exclamation point at the end. 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. You know, that is a dagger, as Baker Mayfield called it. And this was a bad Raiders team that, when we talked about this in the Pewter pregame show, they came in with 5 takeaways on the season, and they had 3 more today, courtesy of Baker Mayfield. A fumble, 2 interceptions. Both the interceptions were bad. I think Baker is very upset with his level of play today. And a kind of curious play calling, too, by Liam Cohen. Only 3 runs in the second quarter when this team had built a 14-0 lead. That, to me, should have been the time where you run the ball, try to wear down that Raiders defensive front. That really didn't happen, but it was Rashad White to the rescue with Bucky Irving trying and not really being able to go with that back injury today.
Yeah, we said it all season long that each running back was going to be important to the Buccaneers this season because you never know when injuries pop up and things like that.
Right.
And today we saw the value of Rashad White. For everyone that's had an issue with Rashad White, and we've had our critiques of him as a running back, he was the player of the game today for me, specifically for the Bucs offense. And we'll talk about Jalen McMillan, who had a breakout game and the best game of his career. But really happy from what I saw from Rashad White today. He had 17 rushes for 90 yards, a rushing touchdown as well. Also pitched in with 2 catches for 19 yards and a receiving touchdown. Also very interesting, just given the utilization of Rashad White in his Bucs career. That was the first time he had a rushing and receiving touchdown in the same game. I found that quite interesting. I thought that would have happened before as well. But yeah, it's so funny, right? Like, I'm sure everybody watching this show are hardcore Bucs fans, and we appreciate that. And we love that. I'm sure there are some casual fans in Tampa that maybe turned on the Bucs game and saw, wow, they're up 14-0. This is great. I'm going to go about my day, and maybe I'll tune in later. And maybe didn't check in until the fourth quarter. It was like, wow, the Bucs are still doing from what they did from the beginning. And it's like, no. The second quarter has been a bugaboo for the Bucs all season long, going back to that Saints game where they allowed 27 points. If they could just eliminate the second quarter, they'd be a Super Bowl contender, really. And then the third quarter was just so odd with the Raiders possessing the football for the first 9-10 minutes of the quarter, and that drive ending in an interception from Tyke Smith. Great to see an interception return for the first time since Tyke Smith had one in that Week 6 game against the Saints. But yeah, I wouldn't call it a complete game for the Buccaneers. There were, times I'm sure Bucs fans were ready to pull their hair out watching that second quarter specifically and a lot of that third quarter. But at the end of the day, when the game was on the line, when it mattered most, the Bucs got it done. And that's kind of been the mantra of this season. And if you go back to last week, coming back and winning that game in overtime, and then this week, just making sure they got the job done when they needed to. So, overall, not pretty. overly ideal, but they got to win.
That's right. Todd Bowles' post-game message was a bit of a cautionary tale as well, and I liked what he had to say. This team has won 3 games in a row. It's feeling pretty good about itself right now. This was not a feel-good win, not like it was 30-7 against the New York Giants a couple weeks ago. But he said, okay, so you have first place in the NFC South, but can you keep it?
Yeah.
That's a difference, right? Getting first place is one thing. Keeping it is another. And they have that now. And the great news is, and the motivation should be for this Buccaneer team, is if they can win out, regardless of what the Atlanta Falcons do, they're going to win the NFC South for a 4th straight year. They're going to host a playoff game here at Raymond James Stadium again for the 3rd straight year. So this has the opportunity for the Buccaneers, actually for the 4th straight year. This has the opportunity for the Buccaneers to be in control of their own destiny now. And that's what you want. You don't want to have to rely on the Falcons to keep on falconing. Thankfully, they have. They've lost 4 games in a row. Kirk Cousins cannot buy a touchdown now, but he is giving away interceptions like they're Christmas gifts early. 2 interceptions today in Minnesota in his homecoming there. Sam Darnold, 5 touchdowns for the Minnesota Vikings quarterback. So
insane.
It is insane. And now the Buccaneers will have their toughest test of the back half of their schedule, this post-bye week schedule that we've talked about. We've highlighted it. Matt, we've said it is full of lesser teams with losing records, but there's that Chargers game out in LA. The Chargers are a good team. Jim Harbaugh is a good coach. Justin Herbert's a great quarterback. This is going to be a real test. At least the Buccaneers have some momentum now. They have something to play for. Not just, they have to win to keep pace with the Falcons. No, they have the lead now. And if they win this game on Sunday against the Chargers, they will continue to have that lead in the NFC South. So they have a lot to play for. They've been building towards this Chargers game. Today was one of those steps in that process. It wasn't pretty, but it was a W, and that's the important thing.
Yes, it's very important that the Bucs keep their foot on the pedal, because even though they are 1 game ahead of the Falcons, they have to remain that way for the rest of the season. Again, they cannot be tied with the Falcons at the end of the season because they don't have the tiebreaker. And as enjoyable as it is, and we can all sit here and celebrate that the Bucs are in first place, the reality is the Chargers is the toughest game remaining on the schedule.
That's right.
And if the Falcons, if I'm not mistaken, play the Raiders next week. So, very much a winnable game for the Falcons coming up. I think they play the Giants as well.
Yeah, should be interesting to note with Aiden O'Connell out now.
Yes, that too.
And the Gardner Minshew is on injured reserve. Desmond Ridder will be going against his former team. Desmond Ridder finished this game, former Falcons starting quarterback, finished this game. And so he will be going up against his former team next week, the Atlanta Falcons. So he's going to be motivated to play well. And we'll see what happens. But it would be great if the Falcons keep falconing, which is losing. But the Buccaneers need to keep winning, which is what they've done now 3 weeks in a row since the bye week. And Matt, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but we know what tomorrow is. It's Monday, not just another Monday. It's a Victory Monday yet again. 4 o'clock, Pewter Report podcast. Be there tomorrow, 4 o'clock on Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel.
Victories Mondays hit different. And the Falcons, they do play the Raiders, and they play the Giants right after that. So, again, the Bucs don't really have much room for error. I'm curious, Scott, what were your thoughts, and we'll get to the Super Chats as well. What were your thoughts on the defensive performance from the Bucs today? Because they finally got an interception. They didn't really get to the quarterback that much. The QB hit at the end was after Aiden O'Connell threw the football. And a lot of just, again, the things that aggravate you so much with this defense of, soft zone, underneath stuff, dink and dunk all the way down the field. But still, again, if you want to pivot in another direction, they only allowed 13 points. So just curious about your overall thoughts on the defense specifically.
I think what stands out is Brock Bowers, 5 targets, 3 catches, 49 yards, and the 25-yarder happened at the end. So to me, that's kind of the big takeaway was we talked all week long about Brock Bowers is their offense. And they did a good job of putting the clamps on him. You had to like that Georgia Bulldog on Georgia Bulldog crime down there around the goal line. Tyke Smith stepping in front of Brock Bowers, and a bit of an errant pass, but boy, did this team need Tyke Smith with Antoine Winfield Jr. going out with an injury,
That's
with a
true
knee
too.
injury.
Yeah.
They don't know how serious this is. Matt, they have lost Antoine Winfield Jr. They have lost Jordan Whitehead. They have lost Mike Edwards. They have lost their top 3 safeties now. They had to rely on Tavier Thomas and Kayvon Merriweather to finish this game out. Christian Izzian also in the mix, and Tyke Smith. So that was the interior defensive backfield right there. Right then you had Zion McCollum, and but this defense just has, especially the secondary, has just been obliterated with injuries. It's crazy. And of course, we talked before the game, J.J. Russell, KJ Britt out of action, right? So this was Vi Jones, who had a bad penalty down there on Brock Bowers that set up the Raiders' first touchdown in the end zone on 3rd down. But this is a very banged up defense. And I'll say this just because we keep it on here on the show, and we are fiercely independent in our coverage. We understand you're Buccaneer fans. You want to hear the good news, but we have to tell it to you straight. If this was not a 2-win Raiders team, if this was a playoff caliber team, say Washington, for example, who's contending for a wild card spot, if this was Minnesota, I don't think the Buccaneers win today. I don't think they play well enough today to get a win. If they played the Falcons today the way they played, I don't know that they beat Atlanta. Maybe they don't even beat New Orleans, who's kind of surging a little bit, playing a little bit better. They're lucky that they've had all these injuries and they're not playing their best football, and they've done it against some lesser teams, the Giants, the Panthers, and now the Raiders. So this Sunday is going to be a huge test, and Lord knows who's going to even be available to suit up against the Chargers out in LA. But this will be more of a measuring stick, because once you get into the playoffs, if this team does get there to the postseason, there's no more chumps. It's you're going to be the NFC South champion, welcoming in a team. That team is probably going to have a better record than the Buccaneers. That was the case last year with the Eagles. And so we've got to see this team continue to grow and get better, and more importantly, get healthy, man.
No doubt about it. Like, the Bucs can't go a game without a key player getting injured, which is really unfortunate. We saw it today with Antoine Winfield Jr. And then the Bucs do this weird thing where they just play so up and down to their opponent. Like, they hung tough with the Chiefs. They were, back and forth with the Ravens until they kind of, pulled away towards the end. But they seem to just play worse against bad teams and play better against a good team. So, next season, you kind of hope that the Bucs have the toughest strength of schedule just because they play better against the good teams. But let's get to these super chats. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in, and thanks everyone for the super chats. We'll start it off with Meets McGee, the $2. Thank you very much. Says, I've never seen Mike Evans go TB12, or as he says, ME13 go TB12 on a teammate. Wow. Yeah, I was curious about that. So on the Game Day stream, I'm obviously not watching with volume because I'm talking with Josh Capo. And it cut to Mike Evans. So this was after the Raiders converted the 4th down, where I believe Myers made the catch. And Jamal Dean had a chance to either knock the ball away, get a tackle, or push him out of bounds, and he did neither, and he got the 1st down. I'm not sure if Mike was yelling at Jamal Dean, if he was yelling at the defense, or maybe getting on the case, and that's a great picture, by the way, or maybe getting on the case of maybe someone on offense. But yeah, it was very interesting to see Mike get so fired up like that, because you don't really see him. He'll get fired up, and Lord knows we've seen him getting in a bunch of scuffles defending his teammates. Right. But we've never really seen him get on his teammates like that. I don't know if you know anything else about it, but I was very intrigued by the video itself.
Yeah, I don't know that Mike spoke after the game today. He seemed pretty upset and dejected. It was interesting when it was during a TV timeout. They put Mike Evans a graphic up on the scoreboard, and they said, they alerted the fans to the fact that he has been the team's nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, which I think he's won before and he's been nominated for several times. And then they also, on one of the other video screens, had like a live shot of him, and he had like a towel over his head, and he looked incredibly pissed off. And you have to remember, there was a large stretch of this game where he didn't even get a target. And, and listen, he's the focal point of what the Raiders were trying to do defensively. But He finished with 4 catches for 69 yards, including a 32-yarder at the very end. That was that leaping play there. That was an important play because it helped set up that final touchdown, but certainly not the game that Mike Evans, wanted to have or expected to have. And really for Baker Mayfield, just a game where just for whatever reason, he just did not see the field well at all after that first quarter. He started off so hot, and then he just seemed to really kind of like look at the pass rush. And the Raiders defensive front, I thought, did a really good job against the Buccaneers offensive line. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to see the Buccaneers offensive line actually probably get some good grades from Pro Football Focus tomorrow in terms of pass protection and all that. Because some of those sacks and pressures were kind of self-inflicted with Baker being indecisive. But he didn't have a clean pocket today. He really didn't. That pocket quickly kind of collapsed on him a couple of times. And PFF usually in that situation will knock the quarterback and not the lineman. So I wouldn't be surprised if this offensive line gets pretty reasonable grades tomorrow. But just eyeballing it here in the stadium, I just didn't feel like Baker had a clean pocket. And he got rattled a little early, and he never really got over it until the very end of the game.
Yeah, for the targets for Mike, again, I think it gets kind of skewed because the Bucs barely had the ball in the third quarter.
Yeah.
But overall, had a solid game. He had, 4 catches for 69 yards. So he certainly had his imprint on the game. And I hate to be, we got to call it like we see it. I hate to be negative after the Bucs just won 3 games in a row and they're in first place. But to me, this was the second bad game in a row for Baker Mayfield. And at one point, he was on fire in the first quarter. At one point, he was 8 of 9 for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns and looked fantastic. And then, the first interception, it was a nice play by the defender being able to tip the pass and then catch it. But it just seemed like that play sort of stuck with Baker and just really got him out of his rhythm. And again, he kind of looked like Jameis Winston at times, just throwing the ball. The interception in the end zone was just ridiculous. You're in field goal range. You finally got a little bit of momentum back after the Raiders made it a 1-possession game. What are you doing? Throwing that football. And then the fumble that he had too. Sometimes you get tackled on the blind side, stuff like that. You lose the football. It happens. He saw that blitz coming from a mile away and even started to kind of tuck and brace himself for the tackle, which, fine. Again, you live to fight another day. And he still lost the football. To me, seeing it right in front of him was inexcusable. And so, I just think, again, we talk about how the Bucs started great, ended great. That was kind of the situation with Baker as well. Not that even that he was great. He was in the first quarter. But if it wasn't for that big Kate Otten catch and run to really seal the deal, Baker's numbers would be very far off. So don't let the 295 and 3 touchdowns fool you. This was not a very good game by Baker Mayfield. I'm not ready to sound the alarm just yet, but it's something to pay attention to for next game because the Chargers obviously can bring it on the defensive side. And Baker hasn't had his A game since really a couple of weeks now, for sure. Yeah,
and really that Giants game was the last A game he had. I will say this about Baker, just because I've seen guys like Jameis Winston and Josh McCown and Josh Freeman and Trent Dilfer. I've seen a lot of bad quarterback play in Tampa.
Yeah.
When the bad game starts to happen for those aforementioned guys, it's the downward spiral, right? And there's no coming out of it. It's going to get worse than you think it is, right? I was in England with Mark Cook when Jameis Winston threw an interception on the first play of the game, trying to force it into Mike Evans. Yeah. And then he ended up with 5 interceptions that game. So I will say this about Baker Mayfield. He does have the ability to kind of get out of that downward spiral within a game. And we've seen that a couple of times. Yeah. He is able to kind of recover in the fourth quarter a little bit. And so maybe that's a bit of a saving grace. But against good teams, Matt, when you turn the ball over, good teams are going to convert those turnovers into touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then you're just going to run out of time and you're going to run out of possessions if you keep giving good teams the ball. The problem is the Buccaneers have been giving bad teams the ball. They've been able to overcome it because they're playing against bad teams. But at some point in time, and it's going to either be against a good team like the Chargers next week or the playoffs if this team ends up making the playoffs, you're going to have a turnover-free game. You're going to have it, or you're going to have a 3-to-1 type of ratio where you're giving it away once, but you're getting 3 touchdowns on the board, not the 3-to-3 game that Baker had today with takeaways and touchdowns.
Yeah, agreed. 3 turnovers, inexcusable. And such a weird moment, too, where it was like the interception, then the Raiders fumbled it, and the Bucs got it back on literally the next play. And then Baker had his fumble not too many plays later. Let's get to the super chat from Virgin Boys. Thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Says, Mac Attack is back, baby. LFG. Yes, we should, as negative as we were about Baker Mayfield, as we should be, we got to give some praise to Jalen McMillan, who truly had the best game of his career. 4 catches for 59 yards and 2 touchdowns. That second one was essentially a walk-in and a brilliant play call by Liam Cohen to – the game was pretty much done then, but that really put the dagger into the game with that last touchdown by Jalen McMillan. Great to see, and got to give credit to Josh Capel as well, because this week he said the arrow is trending up for Jalen McMillan, and then he had the best game of his career. So really good to see him essentially bounce back since coming back from that hamstring injury and have his best game. And good contributions from really all of the receiving targets today, whether it was Cade Otton, who led the team with 70 receiving yards. We talked about Mike, but, Sterling Shepard, 4 for 63.
Yep.
It was more the receivers getting it done in the passing game than the running backs, which has usually been the case this year with the running backs kind of pulling most of the weight. But a job well done by the receivers today, and specifically Jalen McMillan. That was good to see.
It really was, and he's starting to step up, and that bodes well because we talked about it in the Pewter pregame show. There needs to be someone else other than Mike coming alongside him, and we talked about this at the end of last week's game where it was Mike and the Miracles. It was Mike and nobody else. The Panthers last week, I think they had 5 guys with 40 yards or more. It was a really balanced attack for Bryce Young, and now we've seen that balanced attack for Baker Mayfield here today, as you mentioned. 4 for 69 for Evans, 4 for 63 for Shepard, 4 for 59 for McMillan, 3 for 70 for Cade Otton. So that's what the Panthers did last week. They had 4 guys with big chunks of yards and catches, and that's what Tampa Bay has. And I think that's what they're going to need going forward too, because you can take Mike away. He is, he's a dynamic player, but you put double coverage on him, and it forces Baker Mayfield to go elsewhere with the ball. So I like what I saw today from the other players stepping up.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard specifically for me, because he had some production with like the screen pass and the swing pass, and that's nice, but to see him actually like go downfield and make some plays, I thought was important too.
Totally
thank you to Heathfield813, who is gifting 5 Pewter Report memberships. Of course, he's also been a member for 4 months. He says, as ugly as this game was, it's still a win, which equals free membership. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Your kindness, Hizo, for that. Yep. And Bucs Basement with a $1.99 super chat says, this team is the definition of lipstick on a pig. Remember, they are 7-6. It's not like they're world beaters. Like I'm watching the Bills Rams right now. The Bills are a 10-2 team that's really good. I don't think anyone's confusing the Bucs with some of the Super Bowl contenders out there, like Detroit, even though they did Detroit, like the Eagles. They did beat the Eagles. But Bucs at full strength, they're not on that level just yet. Thankfully, they do play better against top level competition. So I'm sure Bucs fans will be very intrigued with the Chiefs Chargers game tonight, because obviously it's the team that the Bucs played recently and the team that they're going to play against next week. So that'll be a fun one tonight.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt, and we'll be watching that tonight as well.
Moving on, Henry Gigante says Falcons are in full collapse. Yeah, I mean, they are. If they don't play the Bucs, they are a pedestrian team.
Yeah. Listen, the NFL is a what have you done for me lately league. It's really all it is, and as Bat W points out, Scott, we played the game we've beaten the Commanders, we've beaten the Lions, we've beaten the Eagles. Give us a little credit. Absolutely. But it is a what have you done for me lately league. Those wins count. Those wins are important. Those wins were in September. We are in December. This is a different football team. Some ways positive because they're winning games that maybe they would have lost because they're a more mature team and they've been through the fire with some of these younger players, and they've come out on top these last couple of weeks, especially the last 2 weeks. But at the same time, they're not as healthy as they were, right?
Yeah.
As back in the month of September. They're not as healthy. And quite frankly, they're like, this game was not nearly as well played as that home win against the Eagles was, right? So we've got to look at this and just be realistic about it. It doesn't mean they can't play well, because they can when they're healthy and they're playing well. You're right, Bad W. They did beat the Commanders. They beat the Eagles. They beat the Lions. There's no doubt about it. But is that this football team right now? In some respects, yes. In some respects, no. Baker's got to play better. This team's got to get healthy. They're missing a ton of players on the defensive side, and they've just got to get them back. Otherwise, they're going to run out of bodies.
No doubt about it. I wouldn't be picking the Bucs if they were playing Detroit or the Eagles this week. But hey, wins are wins, and this was they took care of business. That's pretty much what they did. They didn't fascinate, they didn't impress, but they took care of business.
They did what they had to do. They got the deal.
Yes, exactly. They sealed the deal. Thanks to Alex Doolin for this very nice comment. Says, thanks, Matt and Scott. And Team Pewter Report for all you do to cover the Bucs. You're really the only Bucs media I can fit into my day, and you never disappoint. Thank you very much for your kind words. We really appreciate that. And something else that never disappoints is Celsius Energy Drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. We love Celsius for all of their amazing flavors. I'm a huge fan of the Arctic vibe, also like the tropical vibe. So go to the Celsius website to check out all the flavors they have, like the sparkling watermelon lemonade. And if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, if you want to pick one up, go to the Celsius store locator on their website, punch in your address, and tell you the closest place where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a Publix, a Stop and Shop, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And after you keep going to your bodega, you love Celsius and you want more. Maybe you want to buy it in bulk. You can buy it in bulk over on Amazon with the Subscribe and Save. You can set it up and have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. I'd recommend the variety pack because there's so many fantastic flavors of Celsius. And set it up on your own schedule. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drinks of PewterReport.com. Sorry there. Let's keep the super chats rolling. Thank you very much to Marcos with this $1.99 super chat. Says Kayvon Merriweather was a hell of a bright spot, and he almost had an interception.
He did.
The Bucs aren't too greedy with the interceptions. They had one, could have had three. But Merriweather dropped one on the overthrow from Aiden O'Connell, and then Zion McCollum came very close as well. I don't even think the ball hitting the ground interfered with him making the catch, but hey, the review was what it was. But good for Merriweather. Stepping in. Obviously, they had re-signed him after letting him go, and he went to Detroit for a little bit. But hey, you need guys to step up. I don't know how it's going to look for the rest of the season, but he did his job today.
Yeah, you're going to have Christian Izien and Kayvon Merriweather starting next week. It looks like if Antoine Winfield Jr. can't go, or if Mike Edwards' hamstring doesn't cooperate. And then you're going to have Ryan Neal called up from the practice squad, elevated from the practice squad to be the backup safety. Exactly. That was right, Matt. So it was good to see those guys. And, of course, Tavir Thomas also in the mix. Tavir, I thought, played really well towards the end of the game. Todd Bowles gave his guys a lot of props there for stepping up. So it's good to get some playing time under your belt. You hate to see it at the expense of an injury, but at the same time, if you're going to have to start the next week, you'd rather have a little bit more in-game experience. Again, Kayvon Merriweather is a very young player, played in some games last year as an undrafted free agent, but not a wealth of NFL experience. So the more reps he gets, the better. And I thought he did play well in the second half today, and would have been nice for him to come up with that interception for sure.
Yeah, they do say takeaways are contagious, and hopefully the Bucs are on the right path. So on the topic of interceptions, Kyle Driver, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says overcame refs taking 2 picks away. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it's the refs' fault. Obviously, they go to a camera review. The Zion one was a little bit tougher. The Merriweather one was weird because, commercially wise, they like had the interception, they cut the commercial, they came
Right.
back, and like the Raiders had the ball, and me and Josh were like, "Wait, what?" Like we were like answering questions and stuff. Like, all right, like Bucs gonna have good field position, and then it was like, oh wait, that's the Raiders offense. What's going on here? So yeah, it didn't go the way of the Bucs. We've seen that story before of just not being able to hold on to the football. Hopefully it changes, but I don't know. We'll see. Thank you to Thomas Moore for this 1999 super chat. Who says Cohen looked like Kentucky Cohen. Baker looked like Will Levis, who was his quarterback, not running when he should be. This team still doesn't understand how to use its running backs. We were thin at running back, and he had Tucker back on kick return.
Yeah, I was not happy with the play calling, certainly in the second quarter. Again, when the Buccaneers had a 14-0 lead, I get that Bucky Irving, that's kind of when his back injury kind of flared up. And, he was not Bucky Irving today by any means. He gave it a go, but 4 carries, 3 yards, 1 catch for 15 yards, and then he basically had to opt out. And listen, Bucky Irving's as tough as they come mentally and physically. So he was really hurting to have to kind of tap out of this game. And typically, Matt, we see guys go from, like listed as questionable to out, right, in games. Bucky did the questionable to doubtful, and then like a quarter later, doubtful to out, right? So he was like fighting his body to try to get back out there on the field. And I still think there's a little bit of maybe like distrust a little bit with Sean Tucker. Again, only 3 carries. Did have a 34-yard run. I mean, that's kind of vintage Sean Tucker. He is a big play machine. So he finished with 3 carries for 47 yards, a 15.7-yard average. I think Sean's average is probably still around 7 yards per carry. So we'll see how Bucky Irving's hip and back fare this week in practice. If he can rest up a little bit, maybe only being subjected to 5 touches today. Maybe that helps his cause in terms of not taking the pounding for the entire game. But yeah, I didn't like the play calling. Again, Liam Cohen, this is his first year as a rookie play caller, and we've seen the success. Again, 28 points today too, right? It was not
with the 3 turnovers.
Not pretty. Yeah, it was not pretty. It was ugly. Still 28 points on the board. No field goals, all touchdowns. So there is that, and he's still learning. He's still learning this team. He's still learning the personnel. He's still learning how to call plays. He has had 2 years of play calling experience in college, and this is his first one in the NFL. And you know what? He's better than Dave Canales, right? So he's ahead of where Canales was last year and probably is right now, but he's not perfect. So he's learning lessons too throughout all of this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm curious how the run game would have looked if Bucky was available in that second quarter. And you had to factor in some of the turnovers as well. Maybe you have longer drives. You start running the football. Tucker's a third-string running back, so him on kick return, I really have no issue with. Like, at some point, you got to put someone at kick return, and I'd kind of rather have Sean Tucker than, like, Rakim Jarrett, because we know Sean Tucker can break tackles. Still a little bit of a liability when it comes to pass blocking and stuff. But, like the Bucs rushed for over 200 yards last game, and they ran it pretty well with Rashad White. I'm not going to nitpick and get angry about, like, oh, they only use Sean Tucker this amount or that amount when they're running the ball so well. So, and he'll play more if Bucky Irving doesn't play. Thanks to J.D. Foster for the 279 Super Chat. Says, Dean is so weak, needs to be gone as soon as possible in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could happen. We'll see how the season plays out. We saw Carlton Davis get traded away in the last year of his contract. We might see that again, but again, the issue then was, okay, you trade Carlton Davis to get Zion McCollum elevated to his spot, and you still had Dean. Now there's no backup plan, right? It was the backup plan a drafted cornerback? Is it Bryce Hall who's going to be coming back from a leg injury? Is he going to get re-signed? Are they going to go out and sign a better cornerback in free agency? And take a chance he's not a free agent bust? I don't know. It's easy to sit there and say, get rid of the guy. Okay, well, great. But who are you going to replace him with? Cornerback is weak right now in terms of depth. And at least he's a competent starter. I'm not saying he's great by any means. Probably is not worth the contract that he was given. But who are you going to replace him with? That's
right. And like there are a couple of corners that I think are going to be available in free agency this year, but like, how much are you going to pay for that corner? Like, how much of a discount are you getting, or are you paying more for this replacement corner instead of still having Jamal Dean? And, the fourth down play where Dean could have got the tackle or made a stop was a really bad play. But up until that point, I don't know. I thought Jamal Dean was fine up until that moment. It wasn't like he was getting beat. Granted, it's the Raiders, Nathan O'Connell and Desmond Ridder. But, like, I don't know. I had no issues with Jamal Dean up until that fourth down play. So I get it. Prisoners of the moment, and you want to freak out for that. Sure. But I don't know. The biggest issue for Jamal Dean this whole season has just been what it's been for his whole career, his injuries. And can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
He just doesn't make it a plays,
Yeah. Lutz or Lutz, depending on how you spell it. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, do you have to worry about the passing offense? When the run game isn't working, the offense has trouble moving the ball consistently.
I think the only thing to maybe worry about with this passing game, outside of not having Chris Godwin, is there's really no deep shot element. There's no deep shots to scare the secondary into playing a little deeper and not as tight. And I think that's maybe the fatal flaw of this Liam Cohen offense. And he was even asked about this in his press conference on Thursday about, does it bother you or worry you that there hasn't been enough deep shots taken? And he said, no, because we've been able to get by without it. And I mean, the Bucs have put up a ton of yards, passing touchdowns. Baker's had a good year from that perspective. But I do think they're missing a deep shot element of this offense. It's not nearly as vertical based as we've seen, certainly with Bruce Arians, which was all vertical based. Yeah. And it's not even as somewhat vertical based as Dave Canales, because we would see those deep shots. This is a lot more underneath, intermediate, crossing routes, short throws, and it works. But what it does is the defensive backs creep up and they play tighter coverage because there's no threat to go deep. There's no deep shots to keep that secondary honest, to maybe coax them into playing some cover two, et cetera. And Mike Evans he's one of the best deep ball receivers in NFL history. I mean, he's had a lot of big time chunk plays, no matter who the quarterback is. So and I'm just gonna say this, Trey Palmer is just, he's just a guy. I mean, there's nothing special about Trey Palmer whatsoever. Didn't even have a catch today. I mean, he has been leapfrogged by Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard. And I know he's got speed, but it's kind of worthless in this offense because they're not taking deep shots.
Yeah.
And I don't even think the defense is really respecting Trey Palmer. It's not like he is, forcing his safety to stay back, and it's not like he's creating plays underneath. Maybe at the beginning of the season that was the case, but it's certainly not now because the Bucs just don't throw it deep. So I would like to see Liam Cohen make an adjustment and take some deep shots just to help out his underneath and intermediate passing game.
Yeah, keep something on the mind for the defense. And that's a really good point you make about Trey Palmer, because you could at least before this season hang your hat on, well, Trey Palmer's fast, so he can take the top off of the defense. Yeah. And even if you're a one-trick pony, I mean, Deshaun Jackson made a really good career being just a deep threat down the field.
Yeah. Scotty Miller here in Tampa Bay in 2020.
Well, that's what I was about to say next. Scotty Miller, wasn't an all-world talent, but you at least knew he's fast and you can hit him deep down the field. We saw it the last time the Bucs played the Raiders, that game in Vegas in 2020, and then, of course, infamously, the halftime touchdown against the Packers in the NFC Championship game. You don't have that at all with Trey Palmer. Right. To be honest, the only time I've seen it with Trey Palmer was when I was at Bucs-Jets joint training camp practice last year when he beat Sauce Gardner deep down the field, and that generated a lot of buzz. Now, to get back to that comment, what helps the Bucs is the running game. The Bucs work very well hand in hand with the run game and the passing game, where they don't need to rely on the deep shots as much, and they really haven't gone to it at all. This game specifically, it felt very much like it was only the intermediate passing, and that's it. Like, not even short passes. And for a lot of the season, it's been that intermediate 15-yard pass, and then like screens and swing passes. And that's been the whole passing game. Now, because they've run the ball so well, they don't need to rely on those deep shots. And they're still putting up a lot of points. So it's a little bit of nitpicking for sure, but I understand the concerns. Let's get to Jamie Miles. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says Falcons fans might dread it. They might even run from it, but their Falcons will always Falcon. It's unbelievable. New quarterback, new coaching staff, yet the same results for the Atlanta Falcons. And outside of playing the Bucs, as Jamie with another super chat, thank you very much, says Cousins minus Bucs game. 2,611 yards, 9 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. It is just, they're a pedestrian football team. They really are.
Yeah, and the way it's looking now, I mean, if you're the Buccaneers, that's probably the scariest matchup that you would have. Not that as the 4th seed, right? The NFC South with the Bucs get in. Let's say they get in 10 wins, whatever. They might be the 4th seed, right, of the division winners. So they wouldn't even necessarily have to play like the Falcons. If the Falcons were to kind of sneak in, that would probably be an improbable matchup. Not saying it wouldn't happen, but the Falcons would probably play a team that had a better record, maybe the Vikings or someone like that, or the Eagles. But for whatever reason, that's a team that you don't want to play. You don't want to play the Falcons if you're the Bucs and you steal the division championship away from them. You don't want to welcome them into the wild card because they're probably going to come in here with a bunch of confidence. They swept you. Kirk Cousins, he plays well against the Buccaneers. So keep an eye on the Falcons. You don't want to see them in the playoffs if you're Tampa Bay, just because for whatever reason, he plays like Superman in those games against Tampa Bay this year, but like Clark Kent against everybody else.
Yeah, I think if they were to meet up in the playoffs, I think it would at least have to be the second round, because the Bucs do have a chance of getting the 3rd seed if they win the division.
That's true.
Seattle's playing right now; they are the 3rd seed, and the Falcons got the wild card. They would definitely be the last wild card. So they'd end up playing either the Lions or the Eagles, who end up not getting the number 1 seed. But yeah, I mean, the playoffs are a different animal and different things happen. At that point, you don't want to give them any momentum.
That's right.
Thank you to JD Foster for this $13.99 super chat. Says, was watching Green Bay versus the Lions the other day, and we are nowhere near that level. I know we have injuries, but this team needs a lot of work, especially with Baker being so inconsistent and turnover prone.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's what we're seeing. I know everyone wants to feel good about being on top of the NFC South, and we're not here to rain on anyone's parade. That is a fact. This team won their 7th game. They have won 3 in a row. They have some momentum. They're winning despite not playing that well. They're winning despite all the injuries. That's the key. They're winning, coupled with the Falcons falconing. That's great. Yeah. But if you were to play the Green Bay Packers on Sunday, if you were to play the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday, or the Detroit Lions, the Bucs wouldn't be favored, nor should they be.
No.
And I'm not sure I would necessarily pick the Buccaneers based upon the injury and how inconsistent they're playing. And the Chargers are going to give this team a real fight, more of a fight than they've had the last 3 weeks, and we'll see what happens. This will kind of be a late season measuring stick game, Matt. We talked about the measuring stick games early in the season, right? That Detroit Lions game was a measuring stick game in week 2. That Eagles game in week 4 was a measuring stick game, right? And the Bucs measured it really well. They started off 3-1, right?
Yeah.
But then they ran into a buzzsaw against playoff caliber teams. Atlanta twice, Baltimore, Kansas City, San Francisco, who's beating the crap out of the Bears 24-0 right now. And they're trying to make a late season run as well in the NFC West. So it's fair to say that. It's fair to say that, as of right now, with 4 games left to go, the Buccaneers probably aren't going to match up very well and necessarily beat the Packers or Lions right now. But they don't have to play them right now. If they're going to play them, it's going to be in January. And this team has a month to go in terms of getting better, figuring out their crap, becoming more consistent, and more importantly, getting healthy.
And all those games against playoff caliber teams that you mentioned, all losses. So they haven't showed up.
That's right.
In those moments. If they played the Lions or the Packers, this week, I think
Yeah.
either of those teams, I don't think it's that far-fetched to say that they would score
Right.
40 against
Yeah.
the Buccaneers. And that's what makes next week's game so exciting, because it is a litmus test, because
Yeah.
it's December. Like, you want
That's
to be
right.
playing your best football starting
Yeah.
now, or at least in the next couple of weeks. And
Right.
if the Bucs, let's just say they lose to the Chargers, but they win out the rest of the season, I still don't know how good you're feeling about this team going into the playoffs if they end up winning the division, based on the caliber of opponents they've beaten. Now, you don't make the
Yeah.
schedule. You can only play
That's
who's
right.
in front of you, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily feel good. Like, not all 10 wins are the same,
Exactly.
And
No, that's
sure,
a
you can
great
say,
point.
oh, you beat the Lions. All right, well, that was week 2. Like, the
Yeah.
Lions are a way better team now.
They are.
Same with, again, the Eagles. I don't want to harp on it too
Yep.
much, but again, they didn't
Right.
have their
And
2
Matt,
wide receivers in their offensive line. So,
yeah. And you're talking about the Chargers. You're talking about the Chargers and the Chiefs. They play tonight, and you know what? It's 5:50 here live on the East Coast Eastern time. There's still time to get to Walk-Ons and watch that game tonight and enjoy some game day specials.
What an amazing comeback, Coach.
You're not kidding. I mean, we did lose the game badly, but coming to Walk-Ons afterward, the team got a much-needed win off the field.
Walk-Ons for the win.
Well, thankfully, the Buccaneers won, and there's going to be a Victory Monday podcast tomorrow at 4 o'clock Eastern time on Pewter Report TV. There's still time for you to get to Walk-Ons tonight in Lakeland, Midtown Tampa, or up in Wesley Chapel to celebrate the Bucs win and maybe get a little sneak peek of what the Chargers are going to do against the Chiefs. And you can do that and enjoy some game day specials at Walk-Ons. That's right. Saturdays and Sundays, pints are $4.49, 22-ounce pours $5.99, Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, Budweiser, $5 Heineken Silver 12-ounce cans, $5 neutral assorted flavors. And I talked about Victory Monday. It is a Victory Monday tomorrow and every Monday, really, at Walk-Ons. 3 p.m. to close. You can watch Monday Night Football tomorrow and enjoy drink specials, $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints, $4 house wine, $5.49 domestic drafts, 22 ounces, and a bunch of great inflation-busting deals when it comes to their starters, their food items. You can't make it to Walk-Ons tomorrow? Okay, fine. How about Tuesday? All-day happy hour, open to close, including $5 Tito's. Go to walkons.com for driving directions, locations, and menu options. And if you haven't tried Walk-Ons yet, make it this week. Why? Because they have great food, great fun, and great football all in one place at Walk-Ons.
Yeah, make sure you check it out. Thank you to LDBC's Most Wanted for this $1.99 super chat. It says, Saludos Rashad, 100 total yards and 2 touchdowns today. Yeah, again, I think today he showed why he's still very important to this team. He gets it done in a different way than Bucky Irving, but they needed all of Rashad White today, and he did a great job with those 2 touchdowns.
Yep, and that's right. Mia San Mia, Victory Monday tomorrow on tap. We're looking forward to it already.
Yes, 4 o'clock. Make sure you tune in. Of course, roll call as well, as we do every Monday show. We'll get some injury updates, too, on Bucky Irving, Antoine Winfield Jr., et cetera, et cetera. Quinn Dietering, thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, today was my first Buccaneer game.
Very cool.
Great win.
Very cool.
Offense was up and down, but great fourth quarter. Defense was great. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yes.
Hope you had a fantastic time. Sounds like you did. Getting to see them win. And at least the Bucs bookended it. I guess you'd rather have them start good and finish good instead of start crappy, end crappy, but play solid in the second and third quarter. So one time I would just like the Bucs to play complete 4 quarters. I don't think we've seen that for a little while.
Yep, I agree. Shaggy says, hit that thumbs up. That's right. Every time you do that on our Pewter Report videos, whether it's Matt's Pewter Picks and Props or whether it's my Pewter Pulse videos, I've got some in the works for this week. Our Pewter Report podcast, Pewter Pregame, Pewter Game Day, all of our videos. If you do a couple things, hit the like button. Also leave a comment after those shows. It does wonders for us. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm, gets us in front of more awesome Bucs fans, and they discover Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel as well. So thank you all. If you've done that, please continue to do so. Greatly appreciate it.
Furu Kawab, thanks for the $2 super chat, says, it'll be funny if Desmond Ridder beats Atlanta next week. Yeah, that injury looked bad to Adrian O'Connell, so I doubt that they'll see him next week. And for the Raiders, I guess if you want to talk positive, you at least got a full week to game plan with Desmond Ridder versus throwing him in last
Right.
second because of an injury. But yeah, that would be funny. The revenge game of Desmond Ridder against Atlanta after Atlanta just had the Kirk Cousins, well, what they wanted to be a revenge game against the Vikings today, but they were not victorious. So we've seen that a couple of times this year. I mean, I know we've seen Matt Stafford against the Lions before, but Stafford and Goff, they faced off in week 1. Sam Darnold played against the Jets this year. Geno Smith played against the Jets. Kirk Cousins today, and now Desmond Ridder against Atlanta next week. So yeah, hopefully he can help out the Bucs and get a win.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Timothy Fitzgerald, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says Tampa Bay may be lucky and catch the Chargers without Dobbins or McConkey. Yeah, I know Dobbins is going to be out for a couple of weeks, so he won't be playing. McConkey, I was not sure of.
He's questionable for tonight's game. I just saw on the TV here, the TV monitor. He's questionable for tonight's game, so we'll see if he plays and how well he does, and or if he'll be ready to go next week. But he has been a dynamic force for them as a rookie. They'll be facing some Georgia Bulldogs here in back-to-back weeks. Georgia's had a big week. I was just up in Athens, watching their 8 overtime win against Georgia Tech, literally just down the street. I was actually in Athens watching that game because it's about here at the Sanford Stadium, rock and roll with that. And then, of course, yesterday they win the SEC championship in overtime again against Texas. Tyke Smith was beaming about that after the game today. Of course, the Georgia Bulldog, great himself, and getting his interception in his comeback game, stepping in front of a Bulldog in Brock Bowers. Now he'll have a chance to go up against another Bulldog he's seen in practice, Ladd McConkey, who has done wonderful things for both the Chargers and for Georgia. So we'll see if Tyke Smith can make life miserable with some more Bulldog and Bulldog crime for another one of his former teammates.
Yeah, I was a big fan of McConkey coming out of the draft.
I was too.
So, yeah. I wanted the Bucs to get him, but, they obviously went in a different direction. Another super chat from Timothy Fitzgerald. Thank you for the $2. Says, deepest condolences to your family, Scott. I love Pewter Report. Appreciate it.
Very tough 2 weeks rolling here into this week's game. It's been a whirlwind, but greatly appreciate all the support. Thank you very much. And again, thank you all Pewter reporters, Matt Matera, Josh Capo, Adam Sly Slavon, and Bailey Adams for stepping up. Had no doubt that you guys would. The content was there. The podcasts were there. And you all deserve the best coverage. And I feel like we have the best Pewter Report team possible. So just thank you all for your support. And thank you, Pewter reporters, for just keeping the ship rolling and doing a great job.
Yeah, grateful for the whole team. I enjoy working with everybody. And it's a lot more fun, too, when the Bucs are winning. So
yes,
glad that the Bucs can make it 3 in a row. And again, be on top of the NFC South. I think Bucs fans should kind of take the 24-hour rule like the players do. Enjoy them winning today. Enjoy them on top in the standings, but then get ready as well for a big week coming up.
So I want to address this here. This is from Brian S. Cansey running behind and watching O'Connell throw the ball and still shoving him down late was ugly. Don't like seeing Bucs play as borderline dirty as it gets. He saw him throw the ball away. That's true. I will say this. Kalijah Cansey was being held. There was an instance where he had illegal hands to the face, against him. The refs weren't calling any of it. He was clearly frustrated. He shoved Aiden O'Connell down twice. And so that was just out of frustration, nothing against Aiden O'Connell. He was frustrated at the refs for not calling holding and him getting mugged in the middle. And I'll tell you, too, just a frustration from the defensive tackles as a whole, because these guys had kind of been the dynamic duo for the Buccaneers, talking about Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea. And I think they took their frustration out on Aiden O'Connell a little bit, even Vita Vea getting a legal headshot in there for O'Connell. But it just was kind of surprising. The Raiders' offensive line, Jackson Powers Johnson, and again, I think there was definitely some holding going on. But if you look at Tampa Bay's defensive tackle play, Vita Vea had 1 quarterback hit. That's probably it right there. And 1 tackle. Kalijah Cansey had 3 quarterback hits and 2 tackles. So those defensive tackles were really kind of neutralized from a production standpoint today by the Raiders offensive line. And I think that really ticked off Elijah Cansey, because we've talked to him in the locker room. He is a nice guy. He is a straight up dude. He's not a villain by any means. And I'm sure he felt bad about seeing Aiden O'Connell get hurt, but still, his emotions in that second half were at an all-time peak, because he was very unhappy.
He's got to watch out too, because he had that penalty recently where he hit the quarterback out of bounds, or it was kind of close towards the end. I will say though, I don't mind. I feel bad that Aiden O'Connell got hurt. I don't mind when the players push the quarterback. If they fall after, then that's what happens. But a lot of times you'll see those late hits, roughing the passer type of stuff, because they either drive the quarterback into the ground or hit helmet to helmet and stuff like that. And I feel like if you just push, you get away with it a little bit more. And there was no penalty on that play. So Nick Dubuque with the $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much. Says the highs and lows this season will always be there, but I've enjoyed this Bucs season. Thanks for your coverage. Yeah, thanks for the kind words.
Appreciate that.
Bucs in recent years have been a roller coaster. There have certainly been peaks and valleys, and
not for the faint of heart.
Today was kind of a microcosm of the Bucs in recent years, for sure. Joel Elrican gifting 5 Pewter Report memberships. Thank you so much. Very, very much for your kindness. That is mighty generous of you. We appreciate it a ton. And thank you very much for your support of pewterreport.com. Q's44 with some kind words as well says, best Matt play calls of this of the year, Saints and Panthers game. Thank you very much. I mean, the Panthers game was crazy at the end. So a lot of times when it's a close game, the intensity is just naturally ramped up. The Saints game was fun too. 51 points. That was obviously when the hurricane was going on as well. So I was in a different location. And just thankful to be watching football, So, but thank you very much for the kind words. It means a lot.
Folks, if you have not had the opportunity to download Autograph Fandom Rewarded, it's a great app. Then, what are you waiting for? It's free. Let's just go to the App Store if you have an Apple phone. Go to Google Play if you're on Android and download Autograph Fandom Rewarded. It's a free app and it's free to use. And you can earn coins, just like points, and you can cash in those coins and points for tickets to games. All for simply reading our stories. That's all you have to do is read our content on Autograph, watch our Pewter Report videos and podcasts on Autograph. All of our content is there. And not just our content, but if you want to read other sources of Bucs news, it's there as well. And I'm a Kansas State fan. I pull up a Kansas State page on Autograph, and I have all of my K-State news there as well. So it's a great resource to check out all of the content and get rewarded for it. And the best part is it's free to use, co-founded by Tom Brady, Buccaneer legend, won a Super Bowl in this stadium, supposedly also played for the Patriots. I'm working to confirm that, but I do know that he did play for the Buccaneers, set a bunch of records, was a Super Bowl MVP here in Tampa. Just all we ask you do is use promo code Pewter to sign up. That just tells Autograph that we sent you their way. So download Autograph. If you haven't done so, do it now. Use the promo code Pewter to sign up. I do 30-minute live chats with everybody in the Buccaneers chat room on Autograph before every kickoff. So make sure you do that. If you have any questions for me or you want to give me a shout out, do it in the Autograph Buccaneers chat room on Autograph Fandom Rewarded. And it's a great app. Highly recommend everybody use it. You can download that and then plug in your favorite teams, different sports, and get all the information and news you need in one spot. That's kind of like our app.
Yeah, right on. So all of your Pewter Report coverage can be found right there on the Autograph app. I think that's going to do it for us on today's show. Reminder, we have Victory Monday tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Of course, roll call coming up at 4:20. We'll hear what Todd Bowles had to say tomorrow, especially a lot with the injury updates that obviously everyone cares about and should care about a lot. But until then, make sure you follow us on all of our social media. You can find us on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment as well. So, for Scott Reynolds. I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. Congrats on another Bucs win, and we'll see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.